class in her bed.
Okay, now we're ready.
All right, it is still 5:31. We will call this meeting to order. Nicole, could you please do roll call?
Yep. Ashley Potasic.
Here.
Melissa Kokeisel.
Here.
Justin Cully.
Here.
Jonas Bugan.
Here.
Carly Sherrill.
Here.
Maddie Knudsen. Here. Joe Valentine.
Here.
Sarah Jocelyn.
Here.
Do I need to do myself or anyone else?
Shelby, who's not here. William,
Oh,
who's
William
not
Beck.
Here.
And then Shelby Poole.
All right, Maddie, could you please read the mission and vision for us?
Yep. The mission of WLA is to utilize leadership-based programs, strategies grounded in solid research, and the demonstrated success of core knowledge curriculum as a basis for a rigorous overall educational program. The vision of WLA is to be a school where students become exceptional leaders and are prepared to navigate and shape their future.
All right. So now we move on to number 3, approval of the agenda. Just as a note, consent agenda items later on here are considered routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member so requests now, in which the item will be removed as a consent agenda item and addressed. I will motion to approve the agenda as is.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Any conflicts of interest to declare? Seeing none. Public comment, but seeing nobody in the audience. Besides our presenter, we will move on. So 6.1, it is now time to seat Ms. Jocelyn and Ms. Keisel
Yes.
to the open teacher seats. Who would like to go first?
I could go first.
Alrighty. So the back, for the oath of office.
Mm-hmm.
So starting with I, insert your own name all the way down to ability. If you could please read that.
I, Sarah Jocelyn, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties to the Woodbury Leadership School Board to the best of my judgment and ability.
Thank you.
I, Melissa Kokeisel, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Minnesota, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties to the Woodbury Leadership School Board to the best of my judgment and ability.
So I make that the motion to approve their seating? We don't have to motion, so I'll cross that motion part off. Okay. Board report, Shelby said nothing for board report today, so we will move on to 6.3. Jonas.
Yes, and so you can pull that one up there. Okay, pretty brief superintendent report tonight, but in terms of organization, leadership, enrollment is well on track for fall pretty much everywhere. If anything, we went to trying to over-enroll a little bit more than we have in the past, with the idea that we're not changing our enrollment targets for the year, but that we're trying to be a little bit above to start the year so that we can not have to enroll so many students during the year to maintain it. And I would say we've used previous years percentage of students that have not returned and have unenrolled to kind of make our targets right now. If anything, it's seeming like we're having a little bit higher retention than we expected. So the goal was to try and be one over per class to start the year. I think we're gonna definitely have some classes that are 2 over to start the year. But we'll see, you know, we'll see how that plays out. 6th grade has a couple openings right now, but otherwise, I think we're on track to be pretty full across the board, and hit our targets. So if previous years' trends hold, that's the part that's the only thing you can really use to try and say how many are gonna be there. Because people change their mind, people move, all kinds of things happen over the summer, and so, but looking good. The Finance Committee did not meet this month because the financial reports for July are not ready. They are waiting till later in the month when all the bills come in for June. Normally, those would go into the following month, but since it's the last month of the fiscal year, they need to wait, and so we just really didn't have much data to meet on to update. I will still say, from my perspective, we're looking to be well on track with our, you know, what our budget said, and hitting our targets and so on and so forth. The Governance Committee did meet July 9th. One big thing that we talked about at governance was that, and I know there'll be a governance report, but it's just the piece that we really want to clarify and what our procedures are in terms of, we have the first reading of a policy, second reading of a policy, approval of a policy. And really, when we say second reading, we've typically meant that's when we're approving it, but it hasn't been clear or consistent. And so we're trying to update that. Our practice will be, if it's a new policy, there'll be a first reading 1 month, and then we approve it the next month, unless there's things that come up at the board that say we need to push it longer. If it's reviewing a policy and there's not significant changes to it, then we can approve it the first month, you know, after the committee brings it to us. But I think we've been coming back to things more times than we need to, and taking more time in our board meetings for the policies than we need to because of it. So trying to tighten that up with the governance and be consistent with that. Does that make sense? And what else is significant here? The transportation, we sent everything over to the Monarch. Again, we kind of went to the process last year where we said anybody at this point who tries to add a bus that is not signed up for one, their only option is to ride from an existing stop. So even if there's a family we admit new, we're letting them know at this point, we can't add bus stops at this point. So if you want to enroll, you need to ride from an existing stop or provide your own transportation this year. And next year we'll get you one. And it may be an under promise over deliver thing if there's routes that we could fit kids in. But one of the biggest reasons that we would have our routes take so long, a big piece of the puzzle previously, was that so many people would add buses after we make the routes and when school started, that then they wouldn't be routed right anymore, right? And it made it so the routes were too long for everybody. So unless we made an error or a family like physically, who's attending with us physically moves within our boundaries, we're not adding stops at this point. If we get into the school year and routes are, you know, it's a route that's only 45, 50 minutes and, you know, it doesn't really have much time, we may make some exceptions, but that's going to be our practice. And we're kind of at a place with so many students on the waiting list where if it doesn't work for the first family to do that, we go to the second family on the waiting list. You know, where you couldn't do that as well before you had such a big waiting list everywhere. So it just makes it better for everybody. I did meet with, and Carly met with another vendor about our uniforms and spirit wear, trying to get some more options for families so that just based on where families are located and see if there's anything we can do with pricing and so on and so forth. So we're working on that. We've chipped away at the open positions since last month. We still have some to fill, as you can see, but a number of interviews set up in the coming weeks, and I think we're still in pretty good shape here in terms of staffing. And then, won't say a lot about facility expansion because Sean's going to talk about where we're at with the facilities in his presentation in a few minutes. But I will click the little link at the bottom here, the superintendent goals, which we've added to the end of the superintendent report. And this is just an opportunity each month for me to talk about, hey, what's going on within the goals, or what's in the meeting tonight about the goals, and so on and so forth. And the first goal, strengthen the district's financial stewardship by implementing transparent budgeting practices, aligning resource allocation with strategic priorities, and maintaining a balanced budget that supports student outcomes. I'll just say, again, we'll have the numbers next month, but it looks like we definitely had a balanced budget for last year. And the pieces we're going to be talking about strategic planning tonight and the certified needs assessment, is designed to really identify what our strategic priorities are going to be moving forward. So that is a piece of our puzzle tonight. I'm going to be doing a presentation on the upper school program tonight, but one of the goals is to fully implement a high school program that provides rigorous curriculum and allows students to meet state graduation standards. So there'll be a presentation that really directly addresses that tonight. And then there's a number of pieces within the needs assessment that we'll look at tonight that address the community stakeholder role. So I think tonight's meeting is actually very well aligned with things on there. We'll be getting to those things. Questions? All right.
Do we need to make any motions to approve the supplemental stuff, or are the financial motions typically just for the other pieces that aren't a part of this meeting?
No, you probably should approve the supplemental report.
Alrighty, so as he said, Finance Committee did not meet, but we do still have the supplemental information attached. That was there when you got your board packet. So I will motion to approve that supplemental information.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
For our new board members, the supplemental report just gives everything, lists everything we spent money on this last month with a specific amount. But it doesn't give totals or budget or all those pieces.
Joe?
Yeah, so governance committee met on July 9th. For that, with having a smaller group of folks at the last board meeting. I know I wasn't there, and so that's why there's a lot on here. Because some of those things I think came at that, were supposed to come at the last board meeting. And then in the spirit of what Jonas was talking about, we talked at the governance committee about trying to get rid of the redundancies of stuff coming back, with kind of the old thought that it has to always come back for the second reading. So maybe to clarify though, Jonas, you said only for the new policies, but are we thinking, I thought when we talked, we were saying anything we send to the board, if there aren't concerns, questions, suggestions for revision, anything like that, we'd basically approve it unless something comes up.
Well,
Or
but,
do we
yeah,
want
and so
it
remember
still-
I said I was gonna reach out to Super.
Oh, that's right, okay.
So he said, if it's a brand new policy,
Brand new.
you are required to do
Okay.
one reading and wait till the next meeting to approve.
Okay,
If it's a brand new policy.
Gotcha.
Most of the things we review are not brand new policies.
I was gonna say, I don't
So-
think so. I think we're okay with what we had on here, because I did kind of word it that way with what we were talking about, so I just wanted to make sure
Yep.
if we're okay with that, but, so yeah, we went through quite a bit from policy 414, 512, 520, 540, 417, 404, that 534, which was the unpaid meal charge, even though students don't have to pay for student lunch, 525 to 722, and then 201. So we went through, a lot of
Yep.
that was really just circling back from
Well, the ones that are
What we're talking
6.53,
about
the ones
before.
that say for final approval here, we said we're second reading last month.
Right.
And there was some confusion whether it was second, whether we actually approved it last month or not. I think our intention was to approve it last month, but.
It was, but I don't
but
think
the
it came
minutes
up
didn't-
even at the
The minutes
moment.
didn't reflect that, so we should
Yeah.
do it again.
So that's why there's so many. Normally, we won't have this many. It's a lot less. So, did anybody have any questions or from any of the policies that were in there? A lot of it goes back quite a ways.
One thing I noticed belatedly after last board meeting, because when we did the uniform policy, we were mostly looking at the grid. Now at the bottom, it says additionally, WLA middle and high school students are permitted to wear school-sponsored spirit wear every Friday. Should that just be upper school? What's the practice?
It should be just upper school. And I actually had Nicole Link change that on the website.
Oh, so it's
already.
just not in, okay.
But it's not what he
It's not in
said.
this copy.
Right, we should put it, make it part of the motion to.
Meaning it wouldn't include the sixth graders. Is that what you mean?
It's just the language we're using.
Mhm.
We're not calling things middle school and high school anymore,
Mhm.
we're calling it upper school.
So sixth grade would end up with a monthly,
Yes.
Like the
Because
rest
they're
of
part
lower
the lower
school.
Got it.
and seventh grade through whenever
December.
building D is completed, so.
Mhm.
Yeah, we put that in a motion, something we did before, but lower school's K-6, upper school's 7-12, but seventh grade's considered lower school until they move over here.
Yeah, right.
For all
Thank
policy
you.
purposes.
So that verbiage is below the upper school grid, but just to clarify it and say upper school instead of the middle and high.
Yep. Anything else? All right. Governance is set to meet again in August on the 20th. If there's nothing else, I would, boy, we've got a lot, don't we? But first one would be a motion to approve the governance committee minutes.
Second. There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
So then enter policy 414 and 520 into the first reading. And do we not want that second part, Jonas, with those two?
Are they new policies? Yeah,
Yes.
They are.
I think they are, so. I think
or
we
14
just-
is.
So we just want to say for first reading because it's new policy.
Yeah.
I think they both are.
Yeah.
So just enter policy 414 and 520 into first reading, and then you can strike the rest of that part.
Second. There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
All right, let me just clarify here too, so everybody is on the same page. What really should happen is board members should review those things entered into first policy before tonight's meeting. So if there's any questions or concerns, bring back to the governance next meeting, so that 99% of the time, it goes back to the governance committee, say, yeah, we haven't thought of anything new here, and it's just rubber stamp next month, right? But it's to provide time in case somebody's watching the board meetings, packets, and bring something to the board we hadn't thought of, or, but hopefully from the board standpoint, you reviewed it, if there's anything that's concerning, you bring it here to the governance committee, can talk about it, make recommendations for approval next month. Right?
Yeah.
So pretty much when we said there's no feedback here, unless there's something else that comes up that we hadn't thought of, probably wouldn't be discussion on this next month, it would just be a approval at that point, yeah. That make sense?
Mhm.
Okay.
And make a motion to enter policy 201, 404, 417, 525, 534, 540, and 722 for final approval with that revision on the uniform policy for the upper school only.
Second.
There's been a motion and a second. Any further conversations? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And that policy review calendar is just hanging out there, so we are aware. We don't have to discuss it or make any motions there. It's just so everybody knows what's coming up.
Yeah, and really probably shouldn't
Governance.
have a number by it. We should probably just have that view. I'll talk to that.
All right, Sean, you're up.
My turn. Okay. Pass this around. Are you? I thought you were Shelby.
Oh, Shelby's not here tonight.
Oh, okay. Yep. Go. Jonas.
Yeah. Carlisle, there we go.
I would probably have you guys share, so I got
Yeah,
something to
no
read.
problem, no problem.
Yep. Well, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for hosting me. It's always good to give a live update instead of the amounts of paper that I send back electronically. It's like you can get lost in the fray. So, for those that don't know me, I'm Sean Smith. My company's Centerstone, and I help with essentially owner's representation, project management. So I've been with you guys since, I don't know, 2015, 16, and excited to get this next stage finished for you guys, and so you guys can continue your growth. So I just provided just a little update, basic update on the front page. So I'll first talk about, there's basically three things: any project, scope, schedule, and budget. And so we'll talk about the schedule first. This is kind of what we call our short schedule snapshot here. A lot of detail, but just know, like, every week, this is kind of this is our first part of the project that we go through, is just understanding what's coming up in the next week, 2 weeks, and then this goes all the way up to 6 weeks. So, but each yellow line here is kind of broken out in each phase. So this is the second floor of the phase 2, and then first floor, and then this is the building addition down here. So we haven't done much with that, just because we're trying to get what we call phase 2 done here in the existing building. So there's a lot more detail in there, and so as this part closes up, that'll shrink up, and then more tasks will get added to that bottom part will come up. So, but generally, this is kind of what we use as our weekly what we call OAC meetings, which stands for Owners, Architects, and Contractors Meeting. So, but generally, phase 1 that was completed last fall, so that's what we're sitting in here today. Phase 2, what we call substantial completion, that'll be done the week of August 17th. And so we're probably a week to 10 days ahead of that contractual 25th date of August. So that's good. And then from there, we've got furniture and all that set up to be delivered and installed by the 28th and 31st. So I was telling Jonas, for teachers, kind of work with Ben and Jonas, but generally speaking, contractors like to keep everyone out of their space until it's kind of signed off. There's a substantial completion certificate, and then that way they don't have to clean up other people's scuff marks and all that. So so that week of the 17th should be ready for you guys to really, for those teachers that want to come back early, you guys can move in and get organized. So, and then the furniture will be delivered before, what is it, the parents come on the September 3rd. Yeah. So that'll be all set up. So this place is all scheduled to look like a fully operational school when the parents come. The addition, that was originally supposed to be scheduled for completion the 22nd of December. Our precast, so that addition it'll be similar to this. So if you look at these walls, you can kind of see these are precast panels here, and you can kind of see where the precast panel, like this different sections of precast by those little lines there. We're gonna do the same thing. It'll be the same type of building. It'll be precast. Same thing here with the board floor in between floors. There was an issue with the brick manufacturer. So the precast panels were set. They were supposed to start making them in June, but you have to have all the materials there. So like on this building, there's these thin bricks on the outside that make it look like kind of the design that you see. So it'll be the same brick, but the brick manufacturer for those thin bricks, they had, for some reason, the batch would just, when they sent the samples here, when the batch was done, the colors just didn't turn out quite right. And so for a building that's probably gonna be standing more than 75 years, we wanna make sure that looks right. So there was a delay on that piece. So originally it was about 5 weeks, and so we kind of worked and kind of honed in and doubled up some scheduling, added a little bit of overtime. We've got that down to 3 weeks today from what our jam is comfortable committing to today. So that new substantial completion date is going to be January 15th, on or about there. But the alternative that we're working on is just being able to get, I believe, 7th grade up on the 2nd floor. So they're trying to finish out the 2nd floor so that we can get done before Christmas break, so that then all the moving can happen. So we're still confirming all those details. Another thing is the building official has to sign off on that, so we got to make sure that all the life safety systems and exiting and all that meets what they deem as safe for us to occupy that 2nd floor. So we're getting well ahead of that by communicating what we think the condition's going to be and kind of what's left. So that's our alternative that we're working on. What I would call lot 3 is lot 3 and 4 is where the current play field is right now across School Oak Drive. That is going to essentially be a parking lot, and so we are targeting use of that area for parking and or circulation. Not sure what condition that's going to be in, whether it's final grade and the subgrade of whatever aggregate they use before they put on the blacktop, or it might be all done too. There were some issues with pricing and coordinating of details that they're still working on. But that's the plan, to get that done, and then the playground that will start here soon to get that ready before school as well. So that, any questions on the schedule that you guys might have?
So you think the parking lot, it might not be paved for the first day of school, but paved before winter?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions on schedule? Okay. The project budget. So generally speaking, I think the bonding, the overall bonding was somewhere around 15 million. Of that, what I would call the project fund with all the improvements that were funding all this, came out to about 6.4 million. At the end of June, the balance was just under 5.5 million. And that did not include last month's disbursement request, which was about 500,000, and then this month's that I'm working on right now, that's another 500,000. So the 35% complete includes those two. So we're about 35% complete with build work at the end of June. And we're still within budget. And then I'll talk about this with the scope. I should probably move that for next time. But we're still within budget, and we still have a healthy contingency. So one of the things that was added to the project that we did not originally plan for is that when we brought this project into site plan approval for the city, after their review, the city made us do a traffic study. So that traffic study came back, and they suggested that we do a parking lot to house more cars on site. And also, I think we designed, I know that we also designed the parking lot to accommodate more stacking as well. So it's almost in a, there's wider lanes for more cars that can be stacked on there as well. So, so any contingency we have is gonna almost entirely go to funding that Lot 3 and the additional playground that we had. So we're expanding the scope of the original. So originally we were thinking we could get a turf field and some bells and whistles for school kind of recruiting and everything. But the city kind of, from safety and some other experiences that they've had with other schools, that was one of the recommendations that we had. So we're taking that money and putting that into parking lot, which long-term you guys will need anyway. But we're just speeding it up so that it's done and that we meet all the requirements of the site plan approval. So yeah, and then I just go in the project scope. So that was the original scope. And, some of the things that we're funding outside of the original scope. So we're expanding that. I talked about Lot 3 and the playground. We had some additional entitlement costs that I talked about. I think the traffic study was around $30,000. Really expensive from my experience. And then we added a kiln to the art room, and we're also funding some cleanup of the monument sign that's done already, and then just some overall signage too that we've added to the scope. So, I think, once we're able to hone down the final cost of this Lot 3 parking lot and playground, I'm hopeful we can continue to expand scope to add more things so that that'll take it out of the operations side of the school's budget. So, and that's really it. The other thing that I added was just the general site plan for you guys, or the overall kind of footprint of the building. So if you guys have questions, we can refer to anything here. And then on the last page as well is just more so for Jonas and Ben, but I thought I'd include it. Just shows where all the furniture is going and how many desks and all that. And I had our furniture vendor just spell out the actual dates of when they've received the furniture and when they're supposed to receive any furniture that they haven't received yet, just to make sure there's no delays in that. So they are very confident that they're going to be able to get all the furniture in. And so some of the furniture's in, the bulk of the furniture is going to be in by the end of this month. And that's nice because if there's a mix-up, they've got 3 to 4 weeks to kind of work with the vendor to kind of get whatever's mixed up finalized. So that's really all I have. I wanted to keep it short and sweet. So, but if you guys have any specific questions, obviously, really happy to answer them.
They're easy, huh?
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you. Would you need me for any other part of the meeting, or okay?
Closed session summary we just reviewed. We did Jonas's review for our closed session last month, so that is our summary. Jonas, do you want to do design of the board superintendent management partnership?
Can I pull that up? So we talked about this a little bit with our new board members in our session, but this is the same document with no changes that we've had the last 2 years. And had it on our notes to just review it every July meeting to make sure that we're centering ourselves in what the role of the board is versus the role of the superintendent, and where there's shared decision-making and where it's really board decisions with superintendent advice, and where it's superintendent decisions with board advice, and so on and so forth. But I think also relevant as we're looking at discussing strategic planning tonight, and our comprehensive needs assessment. And so I guess I just want to open, when you look at this, does this seem to match what we're doing? That's really the question we should just evaluate probably a few times a year, not just once. And if it's not, if we're straying from it, then identifying why, and is that what we want to be doing or not? Does that make sense? So it's one of the things when I've done some trainings on effective boards and effective board superintendent relationships. One of the things that's really consistently emphasized is that we clearly define that relationship ahead of time, right? And so this was my attempt to do this 2 years ago. We discussed as a board, and I don't think we have any revisions when we did. And we looked at it again last summer. And so I guess those returning board members, I just want to just open it up. When you look at that, does it feel like there are places where we're straying from this, or does it feel like this is how it's played out over the time you've been on board?
It seems like it's on what
Yeah.
we've been doing,
I think we've been doing a good job
Yeah.
with this.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
And really, that's probably as much as we need to discuss then. I just think it's a matter of being intentional about taking, and probably we should do it middle of the year each year too.
Yeah.
Just the same thing, and it might just be a 30-second thing where I think we're staying within it, but it's important to do. And I would agree, I think the relationship has been very healthy from my perspective. I think we've had a very highly functioning board, and I feel very grateful. It's very, very easy, and there's probably a lot more not high-functioning boards and high-functioning boards out there. It can be very hard for board members to stay within the defined, role when you're getting pressure from other people and you're wanting to serve the community well, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I would just leave it at that and say I appreciate it and glad, and we can probably move on from there.
Are you leading the needs assessment as well?
Yes. All right, so the comprehensive, so you have all got 2 documents here. You have got the comprehensive needs assessment that was sent, and then you've got some discussion questions I put together related to this. Now, those of you who remember, really it was Dr. Damiani who presented to us a couple months ago that put this together with a lot of multiple meetings with myself, Patrick, with Megan, curriculum coordinator, and were you in any meetings with Brenda too, and the assistant principals too, and trying to do this, and kind of where, even backing up a step, where this came from initially is the strategic plan we have is that I inherited. I didn't have much ownership of, in all honesty, because was here for me, has expired. It's, the time range of the 5-year plan was supposed to be over after, I think, this year. And so what we really want to do is step back, look at, as a first step, what are our needs? Identify, make sure that we really are gathering all the information we can. And we're very lucky that we're, as Dr. Damiani says, we're very data rich. There's so much data associated with what we have to do for VOA already, for our authorizer, in addition to the information that all Minnesota school districts have, in addition to data we've collected on our own. We have a lot of data. And so what we asked her to do is just outside person who's not inside here, take a look at all this data and help us compile it and make some sense of this and make some recommendations. Okay, so that's what we asked her to do. We contracted with her for a minimal number of hours, but to do that. And I think she did a pretty darn good job of it. And as you go through it, she really breaks down, gets into the family survey we did at the end of the school year. So we don't have that as a separate agenda item, in part because it's laid out here so well. But she looked through, you know, our VOA scorecard, our MCA data, our North Star academic data, our surveys, as well as the site visit that the Core Knowledge Foundation did a couple years ago, and put together and came up with some considerations. And so if you get to the end on the bottom of the page, I guess they're not numbered, but it says strategic direction considerations. And number one is ensuring that we have a consistent Tier 1 experience. What Tier 1 means is that's what's happening in the regular classrooms every day, the majority of the instruction that happens in the school. When you're talking about instruction, we're not talking about Tier 1, that's where students are getting interventions or support or special ed services or English language services or other things to support. But working on ensuring our consistency of Tier 1 experience is one piece. She thinks we should consider how we can differentiate professional learning and support. It's something that has been a theme that I've identified since being here, that there's the key things we have to do. We have to really train our new staff members in depth every year. And that tends to lead to a lot of the veteran staff members getting a lot of the same trainings over and over and over again. And how can we differentiate that better so that everybody's kind of getting what they need, is the short summary of that. The third thing is what we've known, I'm going to present about our upper school today, and we have made a lot of progress. I'm proud of the progress we've made, but we're still behind where the lower school is. I mean, the lower school has been established for a lot longer, and we're still in the growth stage and building stage at the upper school. And so there are things around that in terms of our identity and retention that we should look at. And then 4 is the consistent attendance messaging and how we're addressing attendance. It's the only data point. It's the only data point we can identify where we're below the state average. Is our percentage of attendance. It was just below the state average, but everywhere else we're significantly above the state average in every other data point. And it's the one thing that keeps us from being identified as the extra high-performing charter school that automatically can access grant money for expansion.
But interestingly, of those who filled out the survey, it was rated really high.
I saw
Yes.
that too.
Like the highest, those 2 questions.
And that
were
was
the
something we had
highest.
talked about when we were talking about putting the survey out. I remember too, was who we thought would respond and.
Yep.
But yeah.
Yep, and so there's definitely there. So those were kind of the 4 big things. And so as we kind of look at this and consider this, it's like the meeting I had, then Patrick and I met with Brenda about 3 weeks ago and said, okay, how do we go from where we're at to developing a strategic plan? Like, this starts to give us some of the information to start our consideration. And again, the strategic planning piece is, kind of identified in that shared space on decision-making with the superintendent and the board. But yet, the amount of work that goes into developing a strategic plan would be putting a lot more work on board members than we want our board member responsibilities to be. We want people to want to serve and, so on and so forth for free. So how do we get from where the board still kind of owns it and is there, but isn't having to do with the heavy lifting to get us there, and to what we want, and so on and so forth. And so I just think there's some questions tonight to kind of get us to check in on in terms of how we're moving from point A to point B. Tracking so far? And so the first thing is just getting board reactions to the report tonight. Does the board disagree with any of the recommendations? Do we feel good about what is in the recommendations moving forward, that those will be areas of focus in our strategic plan? Is there anything there that, I think that's the first thing in terms of when you look at those 4, recommendations to focus on. The consistent Tier 1 instruction, differentiated professional learning and support, developing upper school identity, and then having that, increasing that student retention from 5th grade to 6th grade in particular, and from 8th grade to 9th grade in particular. 2 breaking points where tend to lose a little bit more. And then I don't even know if it's consistent attendant messaging is the right word, as much as it is looking at how we're addressing attendance. Maybe even more broadly than just the messaging words, but in terms of 4 general themes, I feel like any of those are not important enough to rise to the level of our, being a key component of our strategic plan. I guess that's the first thing. That's just kind of a check, like, where the board's at with that.
I don't think I ever saw our old one, to be honest, so I don't know, like, what our end product is supposed to look like, but I'm not against any of the 4. Make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
I just wonder with number 4, like, what's in our realm of control? I mean, it's part of our strategic plan, but moving forward, there are things you have control over to the day-to-day here, high-quality tier 1 instruction, growth, retention, things like that. But then when you talk about student attendance, there's only so much we can do about that.
Well, I think that would be a good piece for us to consider as we're developing what is a plan to address attendance.
Mhm.
I would say, I guess I would say a couple things. There is unintentional messaging that you send in the way you would respond when students are not in attendance, by how early we reach out to parents and express concern, and I think that some of it is at the teacher level, some of it's at the admin level, some of it's at counselor level. But we probably have not ever put the focus on it that we could, and that some schools do. And I think that's reflected in our data.
We talked about that during May just a little bit, I remember, in
Yes.
May meeting. And we talked about something that they were looking at was Parent Square finding a way, because part of it is that when parents don't report when it's an unexcused absence, it's because they just don't call or they don't send it in the thing. So some of the things that were talked about when you were here, remember, Nicole, was like on Parent Square, finding a way for them to be able to report why their kid's not here on Parent Square or something like that, and make like a little bit, like kind of fine tune the systems, I think, a little bit too, instead of.
Yeah, wasn't there a lot of inconsistency where,
Yep.
I think like Allison was saying, parents will reach out just to her and not
Yep.
call the number, and then
Or
someone will
vice
call the
versa.
number, or someone,
Yep.
yeah, so just a lot of that too.
I think there's things we could do that can make a difference.
Just like refining, I think, was a big thing, and then some of the messaging, and then there's just, we talked about that there wasn't a lot of the way that we are reaching out to was something that Jonas was just saying,
Mhm.
after there's been a certain number of absences too, like,
Yeah.
that's a message in itself, so.
But, yeah, there are parts where we certainly can't control, but I think there are some that we can too.
Sure.
That's a good question. Okay, well, with that in mind, then, I guess, important to point out that not in the scope of what we asked Brenda to do with this needs assessment are some things that probably we want to consider being part of a strategic plan. By development, that's talking about the large-scale fundraising that we really did some background work on in the fall and development committee, but kind of slowed down the work. In part, we slowed it down. I think there's 2 primary reasons we slowed it down. Reason number 1 is when we were making the case statement saying what we were trying to do, we were doing a lot of projecting where we were going to be after this facility expansion. And to really let this facility expansion play out and really identify what our real needs are after we get through this stuff. And so I think just timing-wise from that standpoint, it made sense to slow it down. A second piece of the puzzle was that, what the people we were working with were telling us is it really will require a lot of my time. And while I'm doing double duty as upper school principal and superintendent, I probably get to not do any of it as well as we added a lot of time on development too. And so wait until I give up the principal part and then spend the time, a lot more of the time turning towards development at that point. So I think it was those two pieces combined that were really reasons to slow down. But in terms of a 5-year plan, I mean, a lot of what's letting things happen for us right now is our growth. Well, our growth is gonna slow down over the next 2-3 years where we're not gonna have room for growth in the space we have, right? And if we're gonna wanna continue to address things that we wanna address in salaries and programming and so on and so forth, we're gonna have to raise some money to be able to continue to operate in the ways we have. And so that's gonna become a piece that, things will get tight as our growth slows unless we can do some things to generate some more revenue on our own end. And so I think that's a piece of it. I think facility, because we're kind of ending this facility, when this is done, we don't have any plans necessarily beyond this. We have ideas out there that could be in the future that are ways down the road, but if you talk about a 5-year strategic plan, you're probably gonna be starting to think about some of that stuff by the end of that 5 years, right? And so we need to incorporate and be thinking about that. And then another piece that was beyond the scope is our transportation. We have said as a board, put out in some communications that I've sent out to families, that at some point we will need to have a separate start time for our upper school and lower school, possibly as early as fall 27. But I think in terms of the start time, making a decision on when we're gonna make that change, because there's a lot of advantages and disadvantages, but making that change is gonna be very expensive. And I have put in the back burner, I've brought it up multiple times since I started a couple of years ago, but the idea of trying to transition to do some of our own busing, own transportation, that all of a sudden makes significantly more financial sense when we're doing 2 tiers instead of 1. There's a lot of reasons why that would save us more and be more realistic to at least do some of it. It's a big piece to take on, but if we're trying to, just for context, right now we're spending about $1.2, $1.3 million a year on transportation. The transition to having separate times for upper and lower is about $400,000 to $500,000 more per year to have the 2 tiers, which is the biggest reason not to do it, despite all the many, many reasons too. But if we can offset that, but there are some big pieces there, like you have to buy your bus, you have to have big upfront expenditures to save money and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of looking that needs to go into that. But I think that needs to be part of our discussion and part of our thinking. And one of the thoughts that I've had was even maybe we start the first year with just trying to buy 2 buses that we paid for over a number of years that we primarily use to do field trips and sports and those kinds of things that can be tough to field, just to start to develop our capacity and to figure out what the issues are. And so I think, we may be starting very small, but it's a big chunk of dough that's going there and that could be used in better ways if we can be more efficient doing it for our kids. And then lastly, it's been, for as long as anybody I talked to can remember, a goal of WLA to become a core knowledge, what they used to call core knowledge school of distinction. They now call it core knowledge leadership school. And we had them come out for a site visit, which it talks about in the CNA a couple years ago. I do think because we're further along at the lower school, the fact that we're making lower school K-6 and upper school 7-12 is much more realistic to achieve that status for the lower school K-6 when we're applying to one bigger school. And a number of the things that we were not there yet a couple years ago, we probably were or close to if it was just lower school. On the other hand, there were some things that came out that we may or may not need to do in order to achieve that school distinction or leadership school status. And for example, one of the things identified is that we had teachers identifying there wasn't enough minutes in the school day allotted to complete all of the curriculum needed to complete. Well, at the tipping point where, ooh, if we have to take minutes from somewhere else that's different than we want to do it, does it become, ooh, this isn't worthwhile to do? And so one of the things that I want to do is I wanted to go visit a number of the current schools of distinction. I want to reach out to leaders, try to identify some of them, and really go in and pick the brains of people who have gone through the process and achieved it, and what it took to get there. Because when you talk to the Core Knowledge Foundation people, they'll make it sound solely impossible that you get intimidated, right?
Yeah.
But what's the reality? So that I can come back and make a recommendation like, okay, here's what I think we would need to do. Here's what these some things that maybe we'd have to tweak a little bit on our end. Are we willing to make these changes to try to achieve the status? Was what we did to it. And I think we want to figure that out this fall so we know if we're going to put this in our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Because at this point, if it's going to be in there, we need to get it done. I mean, you can't just keep being in there year after year after year and not make any progress. And so, and I just felt like when I reflected on this and read the report again, I'm not positive I have a clear handle on if we tried to have them out this fall and made some changes and get that status, if we would get it or not, right? And which changes we would really have to make to get there. And I certainly don't want to go through the process, pay the money and do all that and then not get the status, right? So I want to spend some time, and I might, the Core Knowledge current leadership schools, there's like 12 of them in the world now. There's a couple in Omaha, there's 3 in the Phoenix area, and there's 3 in Southern California. So I want to figure out how to most efficiently, and I don't know whether it's trying to go to all 3 of those places, or I do some of it by Zoom people, or what it is exactly, but you also kind of want to get in there and say, okay, this is what these schools look like, sound like, feel like, because that's what the people coming out doing our evaluation are going to be doing too, and I don't know if I can get all that through Zoom.
And Kathy
So-
did that how many years ago?
They went to one school,
They
Liberty
went to
Commons
one.
in Fort Collins. And I
That was
went
a
there-
while ago.
But that was, 7 years ago, 6, 7
So
years
it
ago.
definitely makes sense to go and do it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, and I won't go to the Fort Collins one necessarily again because,
Yep.
because I already went there.
Yep.
And I've had conversations with him. But, so what I'm seeing is what we have here, and then also looking at these pieces that I think are kind of missing from the scope of what we asked Dr. Damiani to do. And as a next step in timeline, I really see it as our admin team in August and September, reviewing, clarifying, taking some action steps in terms of getting some broader stakeholder input. We've done the family survey. We haven't necessarily surveyed staff or students specifically about this stuff. So maybe in some ways trying to get staff or students feedback, but then also even with families, if they're coming back with taking the specific things we're looking at and bringing, questions about, what we're trying to develop for a strategic plan forward. And then between that and trying to get some more information on what the process is on the leadership, presenting to the board in October or November with here's the steps we've taken based on all of this, here's where we're at. With our goal being at some point in spring adopt a strategic plan that would take place starting next year, July 1st. So that's kind of what I've seen. Thoughts, questions? Do you feel like the board should have more involvement than what's listed here, or letting the admin team take it, go do some research and bring it back to the board in October, November for next step in guidance, or
I'm happy with you guys bringing recommendations and us saying here and
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
especially because I don't know what the end product should look like.
Mhm.
I know.
Do you
Well,
have
and-
some examples from would we have access of examples from other schools or a prior, just so we can
They
get
look
a
so,
feel of?
they look so different and are so, the examples are, can be so diverse.
That's it.
And is one piece. Piece two, it's very common for, well, almost always school districts, but even charter schools very often hire somebody to kind of lead their process. I think we have enough expertise here with hiring for minimal hours, Dr. Damiani to provide some guidance and oversight to us. I think I can help lead this process. And maybe we should save the money and bring somebody else outside in to do that. Which we are a little bit, but at a much more minimal scale. But I think that can be part of our October, November presentation board too, giving some examples of what things can look like. And I've been in school districts and schools that have very different looking strategic plans. I've been in districts that really have it where these are the presentations the superintendents do to the board each month, and on individual goals from the strategic plan. I've been in a district like in Osseo where they've had the same strategic plan for like 15 years, essentially. But what they do is, it's really a broad strategic plan, but then each year they identify priority results within that. That is where they're focusing their staff development, their dollars, and what they report to the board that year. So they can be much more narrow and much more broad. They can be very data-based. They can be there's just a lot of different ways to do it. And I think the most important thing is that it fits us and how we want to operate. And so that's the piece that we just need to figure out what's going to fit us and really drive our work.
I didn't remember that it was Ossios, but I remember you saying about that in the past, and I think that would kind of be helpful, so we don't rework the wheel every 5 years, to have something like that that's broad and overarching, and then pick focuses.
Well, we'll do some work, but next step is I want to really, our admin team really involves 10 people now. Because it includes myself, our principals, which we have myself, Patrick, and then Nicole Scheidler and Cassie Smith as assistant principals. Megan Nath is our curriculum person, Emma Beck, our special ed person. Our school counselor is part of that group that would work on that. And as our Cassidy Shred, Nicole Link, to bring in HR pieces and enrollment perspective, and Ben Broderick. So it's a 10-person team. It's enough to really split up the work and get perspective from a lot of different places. But we also want to make sure we're getting input from our staff, which has not happened yet in this process. And so that definitely needs to happen before we come back to the board in October, November. Okay, feel good moving forward with where that's all at?
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Upper school update?
Okay. Let me see how I can narrow this down a little bit here. Okay, let's go to the first slide. Slideshow. Here, Ryan.
Just trying to find the strategic plan online. I know I've seen that.
Okay, so first thing I just want to talk about is when I started 2 years ago, in meeting with staff over the summer, meeting with everybody, I identified 4 challenges with our middle level programming. And so at that point, remember, we didn't have 9th grade yet. we started ninth grade in fall of '24, and then 10th grade in fall of '25, and now 11th grade this year. So at that point, it was really the middle level, 6, 7, 8. And when I looked at why students were leaving and talking to parents and families, from 5th to 6th grade, which at that point, we were having less than 50% of students stay from 5th grade to 6th grade. Last couple years, we're in the 60s, 62%, 63, 64, it got better. But one reason that families would leave at middle school was that we didn't have an advanced math track. And so that was leaving students that were really strong in math, where with the math they were through at the end of 8th grade, they were not on track to be able to get through calculus in high school. And for those really strong math students, that was a deal killer for some of them, right? So we've addressed that, and we implemented an advanced math track in last fall that now, last year we had one section of our 2 8th grade sections was where students were in advanced math, which in 8th grade was high school algebra. So they're in high school credit in 8th grade. And we will have over 50% of our 8th graders this year, but not over 50%. We'll have 2 sections of advanced math for 8th grade this year as well. So we're getting, but with twice as many 8th graders. And so we've addressed that. Extracurriculars was a big piece, and that was one reason that we tried to create a position for Mr. Broderick that was so heavily focused on developing our extracurricular positions or opportunities, and those have rapidly expanded over the last couple years, as we reported on. There was also a piece with just some of the curricular options, and where we're addressing some of that this fall with adding Spanish, by adding band as an option, and continuing to address that piece. And then the fourth reason, that there was a reputation that the staff wasn't very stable at the middle school at that point, and that has dramatically improved. Because we're adding so many sections, we still have a number of new middle school teachers, but 3 of the 4 7th grade teachers are returning, and all the teachers that taught 8th grade are returning. It's just some are going to 8th and some are going to high school with the expansion. And so made significant progress there. 6th grade was the one grade that we turned over some this year. But even there, I think we're feeling really good about the direction 6th grade's going, and the plan we have for them to really now become the leaders of the elementary school, now that they'll be the oldest, with some significant work going in there. And it's a big part of Colleen Lautenbach's new role as Dean of Students is going to be to really try and focus in on that 6th grade and help ramp up our 6th grade. So I think we've really addressed and made quite a bit of progress in 2 years in addressing our middle school. Our retention from grade to grade is up. I mean, my first year, so this is 24-25, there was 4 6th grade classes, 2 7th grade classes, and 2 8th grade classes. Now there's gonna 5 6th grade, 4 7th grade, 4 8th grade. It's grown and it's stabilized, and we've addressed a number of things. I think we're moving in a really good direction, and making significant progress. Yet it would still be a lot better if we retain more than 62% of our 5th going to 6th for sure. So there's that. So I just wanted to kind of break it up, because this is an upper school presentation, and really middle level is upper school. But this part of the presentation really more focuses on the high school part. So that's kind of the middle school part. And this is just some of the messages as I communicated with families and did presentations to families of students that were either 8th grade, maybe going into 9th, or even in younger grades to know it's coming to the future. Some of the messages I've talked about why to choose us for upper and what it kind of is going to be a little bit. And in summary, it's a traditional and rigorous academics in a small setting. And yet we are going to have a real focus for the students that are able to on uniquely preparing them and supporting them and earning the maximum amount of college credit while in high school. And that's going to be a big focus for us. as well as increasing our curricular and extracurricular options. And I'll explain what those things mean as we go. You can go to the next one. So quick overview. These are the things I've talked about with families, the facilities expansion plan, preparing students for success in college courses, what PSEO is, what our plans for extracurriculars are, and so in terms of the facility, this is all stuff you've seen before, but I kind of go through with families the additions that we're doing, the renovations we're doing, and how we're going to make our facilities focused for upper school and appropriate, and yet also in a separate site, so students aren't we're not having students go to high school where they went to kindergarten. I mean, that's really kind of a barrier to enrollment for a lot of students. They don't want to be going to high school where they, were when they were in elementary. So it really kind of breaks it up in that way, which I think makes sense. Keep moving. So I shown that, you can keep moving. And so we talk about in 9th and 10th grade particularly, our classes are focused on preparing students to be successful in college classes. We are having textbooks, a number of textbooks that are college level reading, AP textbooks when possible, emphasizing college level research, writing, and presenting, which the class that we're implementing this year called the AP Seminar, that's really the focus of it, is college level research, writing, presenting. Also teaching college level note-taking and study strategies. So they can earn some college credit while they're in 9th and 10th grade, but our real focus is saying, if you're a student who is able to and wants to earn college credit while you're in high school, our 9th and 10th grade classes are going to prepare you to do that. And that's what our focus is. We already have, even last year, 3 textbooks that were AP textbooks and adding more this year. The AP Seminar class will essentially ultimately serve as a required 10th grade English credit, but really will serve as the foundational piece in terms of writing, presenting at the college level. And AP Seminar is a year-long course developing the things I'm just saying there. And so that's a big piece of the puzzle. So example, in 9th grade, students can take AP Geography. So that even in 9th grade, they can earn 3 credits. There'll be ultimately 3 10th grade classes that are AP Seminar, AP Biology and AP US History that they have the option of taking. Additionally, in 10th grade, if they were proficient on their 8th grade reading test, they're eligible to take in the fall of 10th grade a career track college course through post-secondary education options is what PSEO means, essentially the Minnesota acronym for taking college classes while you're in high school. But for our strongest students, they would take the majority of their classes in 11th or 12th grade through PSEO. And so then at this point, I really talk with families about, okay, you can do PSEO if you go to any of the surrounding high schools, right? So what's the difference? Why is this something we're advertising? Well, there's 2 differences. One, you're doing it in a small setting if that's what you want, not this big school where you're lost. 2, when you go to the bigger high schools, they don't typically want you taking too many PSEO classes. They don't want to lose the funding for you, right? Well, we're building our whole model and our whole facility plan, assuming that we're going to have students taking a number of courses PSEO, and we are going to focus more on preparing specifically students to be successful, on encouraging them as much as possible to take PSEO courses, and then supporting them while they're taking PSEO. So my daughter, for example, did a number of PSEO courses in 11th and 12th grade, but she was on her own, right? The school wasn't giving her any support. And, legally they're required to let you use their computers in their media center. But we're going to make sure we have teachers there to support them with papers and to, guide them and so on and so forth. And so that's a big piece. Now, in practice, well, this is our focus, what we are finding with our first couple of groups going through, and we anticipate this balancing more, but right now it's about 1/3 of our students are really ready for PSEO 11th grade, 10th grade. We think with the incoming ninth grade group this year, it's a little bit higher. And as we continue to promote and advertise this, the idea is that more of the students that have those stronger skills will want to be there. And so then there's a number of other students that's really just the smaller school that it's about for them, not so much the rigor that have chosen to stay for that reason. But this is really our focus, and you can scroll through that, and scroll through that. There's what's called the Minnesota Transfer Curriculum, which is up to 40 credits of college classes you take while in high school that are guaranteed to transfer to Minnesota College or University. So in some cases, we're going to be trying to help students earn an AA degree, a 2-year college where they're there. In other cases, if they're not going to be taking quite enough to get there, we're going to try and focus on this transfer curriculum, so we make sure that they'll for sure transfer to where they're going. And yeah, I've already said that. So we talked about 10th grade, you have to have those scores. When you get to 11th grade, to be eligible to take PSEO courses in 11th grade, you have to have a 3.0 GPA in 9th and 10th grade. To be eligible in 12th grade, you have to have at least a 2.5 in 9th, 10th, and 11th combined. And so this is where we're talking about a third of ours right now are signed up for PSEO in 9th and 10th grade between the two requirements for the different grades. But we anticipate that increasing each year.
Yes. Transportation?
So.
That's at Century, right?
Well,
PSEO part?
Well, first of all, they can go to pretty much any school they want to, if that's PSEO. We are focused on partnering with Century. And almost all the kids right now are taking 1 or 2 classes, and they're doing them online in here. If they want to take them in person, then they have to provide their own transportation to do that. That is
Which is pretty standard for the high schools in the area.
Mhm. I did CIS.
Mhm.
And refresh me on why we're doing AP and not CIS?
Well, biggest reason is because teachers have to be approved have master's
Trained and
degrees in their
approved.
field and approved to do
Yeah.
it. And not a lot of our teachers, but we actually have one now who is, and who's approved to teach up to CIS. So we will be doing working with her and doing one CIS class to start with. So it's more a matter of having the staff that. It's a lot easier for a big high school to do that when you have 12 teachers in your language arts department. You're probably going to have 1 or 2 that are qualified to do it. When you have 1 or 2, it's,
Yeah.
and you're a newer school, it's a little harder to get there. So
Okay.
the more we can do calls in the schools, we will. It's just we got to have capacity to do it. And right now, we don't. At a big scale anyways. But we will as we grow. I'll have more. And then again, we've now joined the high school league, and we'll be starting to have high school activities. It's going to be tough this next year or two. It's going to be tough because we're still so small.
Right.
And right now, we can't really join a conference
Yeah.
because conferences don't want us if we don't have varsity teams. They don't want to schedule just their lower level teams. And so we are partnering with 3 or 4 or 5 other charter schools that are kind of in the same boat. We are trying to schedule a number of competitions against them. But as we grow and as the high school grows, we'll be able to do a lot more. And so, but this year, the other thing that's going to get tight this year, that's tricky, is going to be, we're going to have middle school and high school teams. And we got 1 gym. And you start talking volleyball and basketball and boys and girls, and space is going to be tough. There's going to have to be some before school stuff, some, the practices later at night, some different things to make it work. And again, that's when we talk about development and the facilities plan. And the thing that we weren't able to get done in this round of construction was having another gymnasium, right? It was in the initial plan, and as the costs went up and tariffs went in and interest rates went up and so on and so forth, it just became not doable. And so when you look at trying to really have high quality programs in 5 years, there's some way we can get to having a gym, and maybe there's looking at partnering with the city and a lot of different pieces around that. in terms of making some of those pieces work as well. But we've made a lot of progress.
Yeah.
And we're making, I mean, we're going the right direction and so, but that's really kind of the message. Those are the reasons to come when we talk about it. And then the last thing around extracurriculars is that we also say, you know, a lot of students leave because of extracurriculars. But one thing that's going to become a reality is going to be for a lot of students, it's going to make sense extracurriculars potentially to go to big high school, but there's going to be a lot of other students that are going to be able to access these extracurriculars and activities here that might get cut from the teams to the bigger schools, right? And so it also will be a reason for many students to stay, or even a student who, let's say somebody, I mean, being a basketball coach is my background, right? So you got somebody who, you know, makes a team in 9th grade, maybe makes it in 10th, well, they even make it in 11th grade, but they're seeing a few minutes a game and they could be here being a star, you know, and so there's gonna be some places where, you know, because we'd be competing against small schools, 1A schools, even in a tournament and so on and so forth. So there's gonna be some advantages for extracurriculars for some students, even where other ones, you know, there may be other things that make sense, but the nice thing is that we don't need to be the right fit for everybody, right? If we're having 126 graders, presumably ultimately we'll have 128th graders, we probably are only ever gonna have room for 3 sections of 9th grade. That's 72 of the 120 are here. If we're right for half the kids, 60, and you add another 10, 12, you're full for your 9th grade classes, right? So we're trying to create a niche that makes sense for a lot of students, and particularly a niche that makes sense for students that, you know, that can be a rigorous thing that lets them, you know, if they're a student who can go to an Ivy League school or whatever, we want them to be able to stay here and have as much rigor or more than anywhere else around in that small setting. And so that's the messaging. That's, you know, we start thinking about identity. That's where we're at in the developing identity. But it's going to take time. It's going to take until we get these bigger classes of middle school. Because last year, remember, we still only had 2 8th grade classes. Right? And so now this year, we're going to have 4 8th grade classes. In a couple of years, we're going to have 5 8th grade classes
Right, yeah.
that we're drawing from. And that's going to, when those bigger groups coming through and some things are a little more established, that's when you're going to start to see where it's just going to take a few more years for it to really evolve. But we're on track. I mean, we purposely started with 1 section per grade. And we didn't have room for any more, right? And we didn't have any room to go any faster than we've gone. So I think it is well on track. But it's still in the growth and expansion stage. I'm very honest with families when we meet about enrolling. You know, especially if they're in 10th or 11th grade, or you're still in the guinea pig group. You need to be prepared that some things are going to be trial and error, and, you know, here are the advantages and here are the disadvantages. And because we tried to start small, I was able to be very honest with families that way, you know, about it. And they've embraced it, and feel good about our retention from, you know, 10th to 11th and 9th to 10th right now. So from that standpoint, it's good. It's really a matter of getting to the point where we can retain more from 5th to 6th, which again has improved, and retain more from 8th to 9th. And we'll get there. Just gonna take some time. I think that's it.
Questions from anybody? All right.
Good.
So we move on to the consent agenda, which is we'll do this by roll call vote, but I will motion to approve the June 18th board meeting minutes and.
So it really should be both these things in one motion.
Yep, and the June, July personnel update.
Second.
Motion and a second. And then we go for all in favor? I don't do that part, I just go straight to roll call.
You have to do a roll call for
So
the
therefore-
consent agenda.
So, okay, yes. Could you please take roll call vote?
Yes. Ashley Patazik,
Aye.
Melissa Kukaisel,
Aye.
Justin Kelly,
Aye.
Jonas Bugan,
I don't vote.
okay, Carly Sherrill,
Aye.
Maddie Knudsen, William Beck,
Aye.
Joe Valentine,
Aye.
Sarah Jocelyn.
Aye.
Do I do Shelby
Yeah.
Poole at all? or-
No, just those two right here, thank you. All right, so that passes, and we will move on to 9.1. Renewing the membership of with the well, okay, so I'll just motion to renew the membership with the Minnesota State High School League.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And then we need to assign new rules for the board, and that's just chair, treasurer, secretary, right? Okay.
I'll just, Shelby has been training Carly to hopefully take this role. So you guys can have whatever discussion you want, but she's ready to do it. I'll just give my endorsement there. Even if that's not appropriate. Even if that's not appropriate, I'm gonna do it.
I'm willing. Does anyone else, is anyone else even interested?
No.
Mm-mm.
Definitely
I
not.
think you do great at it. You got it.
Really
You're doing
good.
You got
it. You're doing
this.
awesome.
Mhm.
Treasurer should be on the finance committee.
I can do that.
Anyone else
Unless
throw in
anyone
your
else
name
wants
in?
to, I've been doing finance.
Awesome. So then we need a secretary, which is technically what I've been this past year. But Cassidy does all the meeting minutes, and you're basically signing off on them when you don't speak up and say, hey, tweak this, before the board packet goes out to everybody.
It's the easiest board secretary job in the
It is.
world, with Cassie doing all the minutes and doing everything.
And
She basically does it all for you.
Yes, and if I were to not be here, you would run the meeting. FYI, so that's the thing. Shelby said to me at the end of last month that if no one else was interested, she'd be willing, but please, if anybody else is interested, feel free. Anybody interested?
Oh, interesting.
Sure, I can do it.
I just only looked at Joe because he's been on the board the longest.
Yeah,
Other than
sure.
Joe, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do we have to go through chairs for committees? Or
Mm,
assigning committees or not yet? Let the newbies.
Let's push
say
that to
what
next
committees.
month. Let's push that to next month.
Okay.
We might vote.
So then I will, do I have to motion these new roles?
You can take them all as one motion, yeah.
So I will make a motion, but I'm in it, so can somebody else motion?
Yeah, that's nice.
Make a motion to.
But you're in it too, Joe.
Yeah, gotta be somebody else.
Yeah.
Just say, I move that in one motion we make Carly Cheryl chair and Maddie Knudsen treasurer and Joe Valentine secretary.
Say that again. Can we just assign new roles?
Yeah.
Or it has to be the names, right?
I move
Yeah.
that we.
We can turn them in point if you want.
I move that we make Carly,
Yep.
Maddie,
Chair, treasurer,
and Joe
secretary.
chair, treasurer, secretary,
Okay, so I move that we make Carly Sherrill the
or chair,
board chair, Maddie Knudsen
treasurer,
treasurer, and Joe Valentine
secretary.
secretary.
Second.
Everybody seconded. All right, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. So future items, I guess we will review committees and committee chairs. So think about what you might want to do, where your strengths lie, where the board might have holes in its strengths. We have governance, so policy, development, which is fundraising, finance, going through all that. Each month with Dustin and our team, and then superintendent support committee. And otherwise,
Development,
yep,
you said that.
yep. Our next regular meeting will be Thursday, August 20th at 5:30 PM. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.